The New York Knicks are building themselves a very nice young core. With the Knicks signing Jalen Brunson and the great play of Quentin Grimes during Summer League so far, alongside with the fact that they already have guys like Rj Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Obi Toppin, Mitchell Robinson even, the New York Knicks young core is definitely looking very good and something that I'm very excited about going forward. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. In the last 2 or 3 years or so, I would say the New York Knicks have really went in the direction of a youth movement. And although they definitely have made certain moves that were counterproductive to that, this is definitely the most they've went in terms of a youth movement in probably 10 or 20 years. And this was definitely something that was well received by most Knicks fans building through the draft, although the New York Knicks have notoriously struggled with drafting in the past. But ever since they brought in Leon Rose, I would say their drafting abilities have gotten much better. And although Leon has certainly not been perfect, as he definitely did struggle with other aspects that come alongside with being a president of basketball operations, specifically free agency, where he definitely did struggle last year, giving big contracts to guys like Nerlens Noel, who even at the time most people thought that was a very head-scratching move and definitely an overpay, and that turned out to be a disaster last year for the Knicks. Also giving a contract to Kemba Walker, who at the time, to be fair to Leon, most Knicks fans and fans around the NBA thought it was a good signing for the Knicks, but of course that doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, the move didn't work out, and it definitely goes on the record of Leon, while also giving a relatively decent sized contract to Alec Burks, who definitely is the best player out of those other guys that I mentioned and definitely provided a lot of value for the Knicks last year, but at the same time he's definitely a very replaceable player and was somewhat of an overpay. But we'll see what happens with this year's free agency class, which is a class I personally think is going to be a better one than last year. Now obviously only time will tell, and maybe this would be another bad class for the New York Knicks, but in my opinion, Jalen Brunson could be a make or break contract for Leon. If Jalen turns out to be a really good player for the Knicks, Leon will be seen as a genius, and this move would be seen as a great one for the New York Knicks and maybe one of the best moves they've made in some time. But if Jalen turns into a really bad player and underperforms in New York, it would be another contract that the Knicks have given to a player that was seen as an overpay, and Leon's job may be in jeopardy. But at this point, before Jalen has even played a single game for the Knicks, I do think he's going to be a really good player for them and maybe a borderline all-star type guy, maybe even getting to an all-star level. But even besides Jalen, as I mentioned, I am still very excited about the Knicks young core as a whole going forward, assuming they don't trade some of their guys away for a superstar in return. Now obviously, even if that did happen, depending on what the deal was and what the superstar they got in return was, it doesn't necessarily mean I would be upset about it, because most likely I would be happy about it. But at this point, I certainly am very excited and definitely am enjoying the youth movement that the New York Knicks have been putting out in front of us. And I do so for a couple different reasons. Probably the first and main reason is Rj Barrett and the way that he's been able to improve his game as years have progressed. Because in his rookie season, RJ didn't necessarily have a bad year, but at the same time, he didn't necessarily have a good year, and especially comparing to guys like Zion Williamson and John Morant and how well they played in the rookie seasons, a lot of people thought RJ was a complete draft bust after his rookie year. But after the improvements that he made in his second year compared to his first, and adding that 3-point jump shot within his game, and even improving his game even more in his third year, which was this previous year, I really am extremely confident in RJ Barrett's abilities going forward, and do think he could potentially be a franchise guy for the Knicks. Now, does that mean he would be at an all-star level, or does that mean he would be better than an all-star level? That's yet to be seen, but I think and I would expect RJ Barrett to get to, at the very least, an all-star type level going forward, as he was extremely close to it this previous season. Now, the next reason why I'm excited about the Knicks young core going forward is the general improvement that I've seen from basically every single one of the Knicks players in their young core as years have progressed. And this tells you one of two things, and I think both of these things are true in this case, but it would tell you either A, the Knicks are actually drafting good players now, which I think they are, and or B, the Knicks actually have a pretty nice culture in New York, which is something they haven't had in so long, which is also something that I think is the case as well in this scenario. And when you have a good culture on your roster, which I think the Knicks aren't necessarily there yet, but they definitely are headed in that direction, whatever player that you would bring in, even if they weren't necessarily all that good of a player, they would be a lot better in New York or in a good culture than they would ever be in a different place that doesn't necessarily have a good culture, obviously. So obviously drafting effectively and having a really good culture within your organization is extremely important. And as I said, the Knicks aren't necessarily there yet, but in my opinion, I do think they're headed in that direction, which is definitely something to be very excited about going forward. Now, another reason why I'm excited about the Knicks young core going forward is Obi Toppin and the improvements that he's shown over the years, or really over the 2 years that he's been in the league. Now, when Obi was originally drafted, he was seen as a player that had a ton of different skills offensively and was seen as a guy that had a relatively high floor. But of course, in his rookie year for the Knicks, he kind of disappointed, mostly in my opinion, due to the fact that Julius Randle was playing so well and Obi just wasn't necessarily getting the same opportunity. But while it was certainly a negative that Obi didn't necessarily get all that many minutes in his rookie year due to Julius playing so well, it was also somewhat of a positive just for a young player like Obi to see how well Julius was playing and how he was dealing with everything and what his preparation was like, and just learning from a guy like that who's having the season of his life was just, in my opinion, a very beneficial thing for Obi. And in his second season, although he didn't necessarily get all that much of an opportunity once again early on in the year, as the year did progress, Obi started to get more and more minutes, while eventually towards the tail end of the season, Obi was getting a ton of opportunity and he was playing at a very high level, even putting up a 40-point game, which kind of just shows you the type of talent that Obi does have offensively. And the fact that he did have such a great stretch at the tail end of the season is something that gave me personally a ton of confidence, and is one of the bigger reasons for why I want the Knicks to trade away Julius Randle, to just give Obi a full opportunity to play real minutes for a full season and not necessarily just for a small half at the tail end of one. But do I think the Knicks young core is enough to take the Knicks right back to the playoffs this upcoming year? I personally think they will make the playoffs this year, and I would expect them to at the very least make the play-in game, but of course would hope the Knicks make the playoffs. I just think at this point the addition of Jalen Brunson in combination with all the improvements of the young guys on the Knicks roster is just going to be too much for the Knicks not to make the playoffs, or at the very least the play-in tournament. And although I definitely do think Julius Randle will be on the Knicks roster this upcoming season, I do at the same time think he's probably going to have a better season this year than he did last. And even if he doesn't necessarily put up better numbers this upcoming season than he did last, all he needs to do out there is just be a team player. And the addition of Jalen Brunson, in my opinion, would help Julius in doing so. But I guess only time will tell what happens with the Knicks this upcoming season. But one thing that I will say is I am extremely excited to see what does. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the Knicks will be able to make the playoffs this upcoming season, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now. And until the next time, peace out, guys.